Another very important truth under this general umbrella that God responds to our sin is this, that God grieves over our sin. God grieves over our sin. So Van, would you read Genesis 6, verses 5 and 6?
When the Lord saw that human wickedness was widespread on the earth, and that every inclination of the human mind was nothing but evil all the time, the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and he was deeply grieved.
So God's grief flows from his divine displeasure. And God is saddened over our sinful thoughts, our sinful words, and our sinful actions. And it's good for us to pause and consider that the way we live our lives, the way that we think at times, makes God sad. He experiences one or more losses of connection, for example. So, Van, how do you respond to the fact that God grieves over your sin?
Well, as I said previously, the more I grow in my relationship with God, the more I understand his hatred for sin. And so likewise, the more I read God's word and grow my relationship with him, and the closer I get to God, the more I see sin in my own life, and the more I grieve over it.
So Van, what's an example in your life of a sin, and why does it make you sad?
Yeah, so one sin in my own life that I grieve would be lust. Something that I have battled with my entire life, even as a Christian man. I have to constantly check myself and have accountability partners, and it's a battle. It's something I fight against, whereas before I was a Christian, I lived in it. I didn't see it as necessarily wrong. I saw it as something that was, fine, and everybody did it basically. But the reasons that it grieves me is because, number one, it goes against God's standards in my life and his good purposes for, sexual desire. And it also affects me as a Christian because my spiritual intimacy with God gets interrupted. But at the same time, it affects my wife Becky, and it hurts her, and I hate that. It grieves me.
So Van, in my life, one story that illustrates a time in my life when I started to understand the extent to which God grieved over my sin. I was at Miami of Ohio. It was my first year of college, and it clicked for me that the way that I was thinking and speaking and acting affected God. And the pain that I was causing him now caused me incredible pain. And I remember being on my bed, crying my eyes out for a variety of reasons. One reason I was crying is I knew that had I died, I would spend eternity in hell, and that terrified me. But another reason that I was crying is because the way that I had been acting in light of God's gracious kindness to me, all the ways that he had provided for me, it was genuinely causing me pain. It was causing me sadness. And yet this is an example of the truth that just because you're sad over your sin, it doesn't necessarily translate into changed behavior. It wasn't until about a year later or more that I came to the conclusion that in addition to being sad, I needed to turn away from my sin and trust in Jesus Christ. So sadness was a great start. Considering the extent to which God hated sin and grieved over sin was a great start. But it wasn't the place where God wanted to take me. And that was to turn from my sin and to trust in Jesus Christ alone.